Imagine coming home after a long day, and there he is, your dog, tail thumping, maybe with a slightly guilty look because the trash can mysteriously exploded while you were out. We laugh about it, we scold them a little, and in the end, we sprawl out on the couch together while he tries to claim 3/4 of the space and snores so loudly you have to turn up the volume on the TV. We love these fur-covered companions with all our hearts and are firmly convinced that we are their best friends. But this is exactly where the trap lies. We often treat dogs like little humans in fur coats, and in doing so, we overlook the fact that their emotional world operates by completely different biological rules. What feels like a loving gesture to us can be pure stress for a dog. It is the small, everyday things we do unconsciously that can shatter their trust or hurt them emotionally. So, let's move away from the classic good boy talk and look at what is really happening in your four-legged friend's head and hormone levels when we cross our communication wires once again. Point number 1, dramatic goodbyes. One of the first emotional stumbling blocks is our tendency toward dramatic goodbyes. We all know the drill. We have to leave for work. We look the dog deep in the eyes, pet him 5 more times, and say in a tearful voice how sorry we are. To us, this is empathy. To the dog, it is an alarm signal. In nature, a pack leader does not announce their departure with an emotional farewell tour. Through our own excitement and agitation, we drive his cortisol levels sky high before the door even clicks shut. He is left behind in a state of high vigilance instead of settling down for a relaxed nap. Point number 2, staring and eye contact. This leads us directly to a point that is often underestimated. We love to look deep into our dog's eyes because it triggers a healthy dose of oxytocin in us, the so-called cuddle hormone. For us humans, this is a sign of deep affection. In the canine world, however, a steady, direct gaze is first and foremost one thing, a provocation or a direct threat. From an evolutionary perspective, fixating on someone is the harbinger of an attack or a sign of dominance. When you stare lovingly at your dog while he is eating or chewing on a bone, you put him in a massive internal conflict. He loves you, but his biological heritage screams, danger, break eye contact, or submit. Cognitive studies show that while dogs have learned to interpret our gazes, the instinctive discomfort often remains. This is a fatal mistake with strange dogs. But even with your own companion, this constant feeling of being watched can mean he never fully relaxes in your presence. Pay attention to it. A short glance followed by a conscious look away, or a blink acts like an emotional sigh of relief for a dog. It signals to him that everything is peaceful and he can lower his guard. Point number 3, the hugging trap. Now, let's talk about something that hits us right in our human feelings, the hug. To a primate like you and me, wrapping our arms around someone is the ultimate expression of love, safety, and comfort. But here's the biological reality check. Dogs are not primates. They are cursorial animals, which is just a fancy scientific way of saying they are designed to run. Their primary survival strategy for thousands of years hasn't been to fight or hide, but to flee. When you wrap your arms around a dog's neck or body, you are effectively taking away their only exit strategy. In their evolutionary blueprint, being pinned down or restricted like that usually only happens in 2 scenarios. They are about to be eaten by a predator, or they are being pinned in a fight for dominance. Even if your dog loves you, the moment you squeeze, his amygdala, the brain's ancient alarm center, sends out a spike of cortisol. We might see a dog sitting still and think he's enjoying it, but look closer at the biology of stress. You'll often see the whale eye, where the whites of the eyes show, or a stiffening of the body that mimics a freeze response. This isn't relaxation. It's an emotional shutdown. Imagine a giant stranger suddenly tackling you in the supermarket for a tight, uninvited cuddle. You'd be terrified, right? That's often what's happening internally for your dog. Furthermore, placing your limbs over a dog's shoulders is a high-level dominance gesture in the canine world. By hugging him, you are unintentionally shouting at him in his own language that he is being subdued. This creates a massive emotional dissonance. He wants to trust you, but his body is telling him he's under pressure. Instead of the full-body squeeze, try a gentle rub on the chest or the side of the neck. It respects his personal space and allows him to maintain his sense of agency. When you stop invading that invisible bubble, you'll notice he actually starts seeking your proximity more often, because he finally feels safe enough to let his guard down. Point number 4, cleaning away their identity. Things get truly critical with a topic we usually don't even have on our radar: excessive hygiene and scrubbing away his scent. We humans love the smell of fresh lemon or lavender in the house. For a dog, this is an olfactory disaster. Dogs have up to 300 million scent receptors, compared to our measly 5 million. Their olfactory brain is massive, and they perceive the world primarily through their nose. When we use harsh cleaners to disinfect everything, we destroy his landmarks. Dogs have scent glands on their paws and faces, which they use to mark their environment to feel secure. This isn't about being dirty. It is territorial marking on a biological level. If we then wash him with perfume shampoos, we rob him of his identity. He no longer smells like himself or to other dogs, which can lead to massive insecurity in social interactions. It is like someone taking your glasses and putting you in a room full of thick fog. Furthermore, artificial scents often mask important pheromones that the dog uses for self-soothing. A dog who can no longer find his own scent in his home lives in a permanent state of emotional homelessness. Point number 5, inconsistent rules. We also need to talk about our inconsistency. Today the dog is allowed on the couch because we had a bad day and want to cuddle. Tomorrow the fur is flying and he gets kicked off. This arbitrariness is pure stress for an animal that seeks clear social structures. This isn't about dominance. It is about predictability. A brain that does not understand the rules produces cortisol. Dogs love rituals because they provide security. When the rules constantly fluctuate, the dog loses trust in your leadership, not because he wants to be the boss, but because he no longer feels safe with you. Now, stop right there. Take a breath and really look at your dog if they're nearby. I need you to lean in for this next part, because we are about to enter a territory where our good intentions become a silent language of betrayal. What I'm about to reveal next is perhaps the single most common mistake we make out of pure love, and it's something many of us even brag about to our friends. We think we're being the ultimate attentive dog parents, but the biological reality is a quiet heartbreak for your dog. If you've ever wondered why your dog suddenly seems distant or why they've developed naughty habits out of nowhere, the answer likely lies in the next 2 points. We are essentially dismantling their emotional safety net piece by piece without even knowing it. Point number 6, rushing the walk. And then there is our impatience during walks. We often go for a walk just to wear the dog out, or so he can do his business, all while we stare at our phones. When the dog stops to sniff a blade of grass, we pull him away. Imagine you are reading a fascinating news article, and someone rips the phone out of your hand and drags you down the street. Sniffing is the dog's way of reading the daily newspaper. Through the Jacobson's organ in the roof of his mouth, he analyzes chemical messages. When we deny him this, we violate his need for mental stimulation and exploration. Stop right there for a second, because what I'm going to tell you next is perhaps the most widespread mistake in modern dog ownership, one we often even consider a good deed. Point number 7, forced socialization. It is about the pressure we put on them, especially in dog parks. We think our dog needs to play with everyone, so we push him into groups of strange conspecifics. Evolutionarily speaking, a strange pack is first and foremost a potential threat. Not every dog is an extroverted party animal. Many dogs feel massively overwhelmed in large, uncontrolled groups. Cortisol levels in these situations often rise so high that it takes days for them to return to a normal level. We see playing, but often it is desperate fiddling, a defensive displacement behavior used to avoid aggression. When we ignore the subtle signs of fear and force him to say hello, we betray his trust. He learns that we do not recognize his distress and that we won't protect him in volatile situations. A dog that acts aggressively toward others on a leash is often just a dog that has learned he has to defend himself because his human won't do it. Real emotional security comes from the quality of contacts, not the quantity. All these points show how sensitive the emotional framework between us and our dogs truly is. They adapt to us. They endure our mistakes with the patience of a saint. But they pay a biological price for it. A dog that is under permanent emotional stress, whose internal clock is disturbed by constant unrest. Or who can no longer find himself scent-wise in his own home, will eventually react. This brings us to a very important point: the warning signal. Pay attention to radical changes in behavior. If your dog, who usually sought your proximity, suddenly becomes passive, withdraws, or stops reacting to familiar stimuli altogether, that is not a sign of sudden good behavior or the mellowing of age. In animal psychology, we often call this learned helplessness. The dog has given up communicating with his environment because his signals were ignored anyway. This can also be an indication of chronic pain, as dogs instinctively hide pain for as long as possible to avoid standing out as a weak pack member. Their body temperature is 38 to 39 degrees Celsius, higher than ours. Their metabolism is faster, and they often suffer in silence. A dog that stops asking does not need less attention. He needs your help. If we learn to see the world a little more through that wet nose and less through our human lens, the bond with our dog will reach a depth that goes far beyond simple commands like sit and stay. It is about giving him the space to be a dog, with all his biological needs and his evolutionary heritage. Good night to you and your furry roommate.